What's up everyone, Andrew Baena here, and on today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Blackstar St. James 6L6 50 watt amplifier. I first met up with the kind folks over at Blackstar back when I was at 42 Gear Street back in August in Germany, and I got to talking to one of their reps, Ollie Club over there, and we ended up arranging a deal where I got to take home this Blackstar St. James 6L6 amp because I wanted to try it, because when I tried it out at 42 Gear Street I thought it had a lot of really cool features that I thought would make a nice addition to my home studio. So a really quick overview, this is obviously a 50 watt guitar amp head. This one in particular has 6L6 tubes and 2 channels, a clean channel and a high gain channel. The high gain channel also has a voice switch, so it has 2 different voices. And some of the cool features about this amp that I was really interested in were the cab rig output. So basically it has a built-in reactive load where you can actually put the amp directly into your computer with a USB cord or with an XLR out or a line out. So what I'm doing in my case is going XLR out of this amp, so it's not plugged into a cabinet at all, and you're actually going to be hearing the amp recorded directly into my audio interface. So for the format of this video, what I'm going to do first and foremost is show you what this amp sounds like in a full demo mix. Then we're going to come back and talk about all the specs and features of this amp, which is a little intensive, so that section is going to be a little bit long. And then of course I'm going to show you what the amp sounds like by itself and test out a few different options that are available on this amp. So for the full mix demo that you're about to hear, I am using my Aristides 070R, which is tuned to drop A. It has Seymour Duncan Pegasus pickups. Well, it has a neck pickup too, but we're not going to use that. And then in front of the Blackstar St. James amp, I am also running the Rev Tilt Overdrive pedal, but only the boost section just to boost it a tiny bit because I thought that this amp kind of needed it in my opinion. And yeah, that is once again going XLR out of this amp directly into my interface using Blackstar's included impulse responses, not third-party impulse responses. So with that being said, this is how the Blackstar St. James 6L6 sounds in a full demo mix. Okay, now that you've heard how the amp sounds in a full demo mix, we're going to talk about the specs and features of this amp. So first and foremost, as you can see on the front of the amp here, it's a 2-channel amplifier with 2 different voice switches. They both share the same EQ controls and reverb and master volume, but they have their own individual volume and gain knob. So first and foremost, to switch between the 2 channels, we have channel 1, which is clean, channel 2, which is gain, and then once you're on the gain channel, you have the voice switch, so you got voice 1 or voice 2. As for shared controls, they have a shared bass, middle, treble, reverb, and master. There's also a switchable power section, so you can switch between 50 watts, sag, or 2 watts. In my case, I had it on 50 watts the whole time, and that is probably what I'm going to do for the remainder of this video, but that's an option just as a heads up. And then last but not least, obviously the power and the standby switch. Normally I wouldn't mention this, but there is one kind of interesting thing about this amp which I thought was worth mentioning, because I know my friend Agufish was having an issue with this. So the weird thing about this amp is if you have it plugged in direct out like I do here, you actually have to leave the standby off instead of flipping it on like you would for a normal amp. I'm not quite sure why they did this. In my opinion, the only way I can think of why this would be useful is if you have this amp plugged into a physical cab and directed at the same time. I guess the standby switch would act as turning off or on your cabinet, so you can still record direct out and just have the cab muted, which I guess is the feature of that. It's not really explained, so I just thought I would mention that because I thought it was interesting. Okay, and flipping the amp around, this is where we start to get into a lot of the unique features of this amp. So first and foremost, on the right here, you can see that there is a USB audio out. So if you plug this USB output into your PC or Mac or whatever, you can actually use this as an audio interface. You don't even need to have a pre-existing audio interface. So if you don't have one of those, you can plug this amp directly into your computer with the USB and just record it just like that, which is pretty crazy stuff. There's also an input for the foot switch, which is included in the amp head. And just to show that off a little, the foot switch that is included is quite simple. It's just 2 buttons, one to change your channel and one to change your voice. Moving on, we have the effects loop. So we have return, send, and then we also have a level switch. So you can do +4 decibels or -10 decibels. So pretty standard stuff there. And then next up is probably where things get the most interesting, which is the cab rig output. So again, like I mentioned in the intro, this is what I was actually using to record this amp. So you have a balanced output, which is an XLR output. That's what I was using. But you can also have line out, so a 1/4 inch out, or you can use, just plug it directly into headphones. And then you also have a built-in cab rig where you have 1, 2, or 3 different cab rig options. So essentially what this means is, I will show you this in a little bit, but they have this included software where you can essentially build your own guitar cab room, I guess you could say. So you can have a combination of 212s, 412s, multiple 412s, single 412s, all that stuff. And you can actually have 3 different presets saved directly on to the amp itself, so you can actually just switch it in the back there. And in addition to that, on the actual software, you can obviously have infinite different presets, but it's really cool that they also allow you to edit and save 3 different ones directly onto the amp itself. So if you take this out with you and you don't have the software, you still got those 3 included no matter what, which is awesome. Last but not least, on the back, we of course have the speaker outputs if you want to use it like a normal amp and plug it into an actual guitar cabinet. So you have a 16 ohm out or 2 8 ohm outputs, and that's pretty much it in terms of the specs and features of the physical amp. And now we're going to switch over to the software because that also needs to be talked about. Okay, so last but not least, for the specs and features of this amp, we're actually going to be switching over to my desktop view because I've plugged in the amp via USB so that I can show off a little bit of the Blackstar Architect software. So again, this is pretty much where you can control the built-in cab rigs that are in the amp or just your presets in general. So as you can see when you first load it up here, it's basically going to show you a graphical representation of what your cab room looks like, or your cab rig rather. So as you can see here, I have a modern 412 preset, and this is actually the one that is saved directly onto the amp in the cab rig 1 position. So you can see on the sidebar here, you have Blackstar presets, device patches, and local patches. So again, these device patches would be the 3 ones that are actually saved to your physical amp. The Blackstar presets are ones that are included from Blackstar, so just ones that they thought that sounded good. And then local patches, of course, would be your own patches or ones that you download. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the modern 412 preset because that is the one that I was using for the full demo mix. So as you can see here, you basically have this cab rig, which in my case is 2 412 cabs with a little bit of room on it as well. So you have cab 1, cab 2, room, and then your master. So what you can basically do is if you want to change your first cab, for example, you click the icon here and it'll open up this browser where you can select from a bunch of different impulse responses / cab sims that are included in the software. So in my case, I was using the 412 Modern USA. Same thing for cab 2, open it up and you can see which cab you're using. Again, in my case, I was using both of the same 412 Modern USAs, but you can swap that out to anything you want. For example, if we wanted a modern 412 UK instead of US, you can do that. And then now we have a 412 US and a 412 UK on each side. With each cab, you can of course control the pan, so how far left or right it is, the master level. There are also 6 different options for the mics that you're using. So again, this is for both cab 1 and cab 2. If you click the microphone icon, it has a bunch of different options and you can just change that out like so. And last but not least, again, for both cabs, you also have this option, which is the EQ. So if you want to shape your tone even further, you can adjust the lows, low mids, high, and add a low cut and a high cut. And there are also even included EQ presets if you want to make your life even easier, which I'm a big fan of. Last but not least, we also have the room section. So this section has a few different options for the type of room, as well as if it's a stereo, mono, or wide, and of course the level of the room. I know for a lot of metal people, they just prefer to mute the room altogether, so you can do that, or you can blend it in just a little bit, which is what I did here. And then last but not least, you have the master section, which is of course your overall volume, and also a master EQ, which you can see here looks exactly the same as the EQs that you can put on the individual cabs as well. So tons of different options, very, very comprehensive software, which I was pretty impressed by, honestly. And I actually thought that the included impulse responses sounded really good. Like I said, I ended up using them in my actual full demo mix. Normally I would have used a third-party impulse response, but I thought these ones actually sounded really good as is. And this was the preset that I was using. Okay, now that I've talked your ear off with all the specs and features of this amp, let's hear how it actually sounds by itself. So again, using the same guitar, which is an Aristides 070R in drop A, we're going to be going into the amp. So first and foremost, I'm going to show you what the tone is that I was using in that full demo mix, and then we're going to explore some of the features of this amp, play around, tweak some knobs and all that good stuff. So again, to start off with, the only thing that's going on in this chain is at the front of the amp, I have that rev tilt overdrive pedal, just boosting it slightly. And then also of course a rev gate, because you always need a noise gate, at least for what I play. So this is the tone that I was using in the full demo mix. Okay, so yeah, as you can hear, I was really happy with that tone. What I'm gonna do now is actually turn the boost pedal off so you can hear the raw amp, what it sounds like. Again, just to explain what I'm doing here. So this is the second channel, which is the high gain channel, and the first voice. Knobs are, as you can see here, volume, bass, middle, treble, reverb completely off, master at full. Again, this is the same tone without the boost, just so you can hear what difference that was making. So yeah, as you can hear, it still sounds really good, but I just found that the boost really helped tighten it up a little bit more, especially when you're tuning a little bit lower in drop A. I think a boost is pretty much always needed regardless of what amp you're using. So yeah, we're just gonna keep going and tweak some knobs. First and foremost, let's bump that gain way up. And again, not using the boost pedal. So this is with the gain at full. What are we gonna play here? So we're going to put all the knobs back to noon, so bass, middle, and treble. They weren't too far off from this position in the beginning, but we'll just do that and see how it sounds. Okay, so again, I'm going to turn that boost pedal back on just for a second, just so you can hear what difference it makes one more time on this channel, and then we'll switch over to the second voicing of this channel. Okay, so we'll turn the boost pedal back off, and now we're going to switch over to the second channel's second voice. So in my opinion, this one is much more bassy, and it has kind of like a mid-cut going on. I didn't personally like this voice as much, but this is how it sounds. Again, we'll put all of the knobs back to the middle point for now, including the gain, because why not? Again, boost pedal is off, so this is what the second voice sounds. So yeah, I don't know. It sounded like it had like way too much bass to my ear. So I'm actually going to adjust this a little bit, put the mids and the treble way higher and the bass lower, maybe add a little bit more gain. Okay, so I think that sounds a lot better to my ear. I'm going to turn on that boost pedal one more time, and we're going to play that same riff on voice 2 just to hear what difference that makes when the when the voice is boosted. Okay, so again, adding the boost to this voice, in my opinion, made it sound a lot better. I'm just not really liking all the bass frequencies that are present in this amp on this channel. Even though I have the bass like pretty low on this channel, or sorry, on this voice rather, I still found it to be a little bit overkill. But again, I'm also tuning really low, so maybe that's my own fault. But again, switching back to voice 1, I still think I personally prefer that one. My ear voice 1 just sounds a little bit tighter, but hey, both options are there, so whichever one you like more, go for it. Okay, so normally I wouldn't bother with the clean channel at all, but I know some of you are gonna like to hear that. So really quickly, I have the reverb cranked to the absolute max, and we're on the clean channel. Again, we're gonna leave all the EQ settings exactly as they were for my rhythm tone, just for the sake of saving time, because I don't wanna do too much on the clean channel. After all, I do heavy riffs only most of the time, but this is how the clean channel sounds. Okay, so now that I've shown you how most of the features sound on the front of the amp, what we're going to do really quickly is go back into that same demo mix rhythm tone, and this time I'm just going to play around with the cab rig software really quickly so you can hear the difference in some of the cab sounds that you can get only using the built-in impulse responses. So let's get into that. Okay, so moving over to the Blackstar Architect software, which is what you use to control the cab rig. Again, this is the standard rhythm tone that I was using during the demo track. Okay, so what we're going to do is play around with some of the different presets. Again, like I mentioned during the explanation of this feature, you have 3 different patches which are saved to the device. The one that I was using was modern 412s, but we're going to change it to tight 412s and see what difference that makes. So as you can see, when you switch the preset, the image changes accordingly. So you can see that in this case, the room is muted, for example, and the cabinets are slightly different. Again, going between the two, you can see the differences there. So yeah, let's hear how it sounds and play around with some of the different options. Then going back. Okay, so this is the ambient combos feature. This one is way different. As you can see, we're using a 1x12 USA open back and a 2x12 classic UK combo. Very, very different. Not something I would ever use. Also a lot more room in that one, very interesting stuff. But we're gonna go over to the Blackstar presets because again, there are a bunch included, and just scroll through a few more of those. Let's go articulate 412s. Can you tell it's been a long time since I've played that song? Okay, so as you can see, there are a ton of different options here, and that is only going through the presets. Of course, you can go ahead and make your own presets instead. Again, if we switch back to the modern 412 that I was using in the demo track, like I was mentioning earlier, as you can see, you know, you have the option to change these however you want. Then we can go into the master effects here and bypass the EQ for now. So I think we're going to leave it at that because you can clearly get totally lost in these options and there is a ton you can do. And not to mention, like I said earlier, you can actually fully mute these cabs and go DI only if you want to use your own impulse responses. That's all you got to do. As you can see, they even add a little cat graphic when it's direct input. This is obviously going to sound terrible. because you need to add an impulse response, but it's really cool that they have the option there. The only thing I would have liked to have seen is if they did allow you to have the option to actually load your own impulse response onto the amp, but it doesn't look like that's a feature. It only allows you to save the ones that are built into the software onto the amp itself, but no big deal. If you're recording, you can do that yourself, no problem. Okay, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and again, a big thank you to Blackstar Amplification for sending over this amp and sponsoring this video. It's been a lot of fun playing around with this amp, and I look forward to working with them again in the near future. Big thank you to Ollie Club, especially for hooking me up and explaining all the features back when we were at 42 Gear Street. So if you're interested in getting an amp for yourself in either the head version or the combo amp or just the cabinet or anything like that, please be sure to check out the link in the description and the pinned comment below. And also, last but not least, a massive thank you to all my Patreon supporters whose names are on the screen at this point in time. If you're interested in audio downloads, guitar tabs, stems, or a shout out on the screen, you can find all of that over on my Patreon page. Thank you all so much for watching. I look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you next time.